Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here this afternoon. We have a very exciting program planned for you this afternoon where we talk about organ donation and you, presenting the myths, the facts, showcasing some patients, those who are waiting, those who have received, and to educate you about organ donation, what you can do to help save some lives. So before we begin, let me introduce our CAMSA president, Dr. Ed Aline, who would open up this meeting and give a word of prayer. Dr. Aline.
Let us pray. Almighty and most merciful God, we thank you for this opportunity to come together once again, to share our knowledge, dispense our education to the benefit of those who are more in need. Oh God, you have sacrificed your Son, Jesus, that we may live. We ask that you guide us, endow us with knowledge, that our thoughts will be more like yours, and that this seminar will enlighten people, those who are skeptical of organ donation, and enhance the spirit of those who are waiting for organs, and bless those who are willing to give. Oh God, as this panel come together today, we saw it fit that it's necessary to bring such educational topics to the forefront, that we and the wider community may be enlightened to share not only our love, but our love through giving and donating organs. We ask that you guide us again, that those who are awaiting organs will not be very long in receiving, and those who are willing to share will do so without any hesitation. We thank all those who are participants in this event, and we thank those who will come on later to gather knowledge. We ask all of this in your Son's name, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. And Dr. Elaine, can you tell us a little bit about CAMSA and why we're here today and what CAMSA represents?
Well, CAMSA is an organization that was founded sometime in 2003. We saw it necessary to get the organization together with some medical people, some lay people, and across the board people who can share their knowledge in health, educating people in health aspects, supporting people who are in need of supplies and equipment, emergency situation. We work as a catalyst to help out those in emergency situations, as in the present situation of the pandemic and the volcano eruption. We gather, we research, and we have local seminars. Before COVID, we would go to churches and have seminars, discussions, talk, interactive symposia in order to enlighten people. With the new norm by the pandemic, we are able to use the media service, Zoom to be exact, to reach people across the world. CAMSA became a 501(c)(3) in 2004. That means it's a nonprofit organization, and any donation that you subscribe to CAMSA has the potential to be a tax write-off. We coordinate with other organizations to give various topics, various seminars that we believe is benefit to the greater public. We have on this panel, we have doctors, we have nurses, we have social workers, I believe, and lay people. And the president, the chair of the Education Committee, Angela Trotman, came up with the idea that it's necessary to get this organ donation seminar together because there's a need for people to be informed, and there's a need for people to receive organs. CAMSA has embarked on a new paradigm through the media service of Zoom or whatever one we choose to use to reach greater people, greater number of people. And in so doing, we have reached out to the Caribbean Basin to get members so that they too can be enlightened. And this is the first of a series of seminars that we'll be giving along the health lines. And we encourage you, if there's any topics that you need to see highlighted, to contact us via the website or the telephone number or any member who is on the panel today so that we can bring it to you. With that said, I will turn over the proceedings now to the coordinator.
Thank you so much, Dr. Aline. And so now I will bring Angela Trotman to the spotlight where she can tell us about this program and introduce the rest of some of us. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
As you heard, I'm Angela Trotman. I'm a registered nurse. And this evening, for those of you who don't know, April is designated as Organ Month. And we at CAMSA, as one of our objects is to educate the public, we decided that we'll do a seminar on organ donation and you. And some of the highlights of this seminar, we want to try to eliminate the myths and the misunderstandings of being registered as an organ donor and the myths of receiving organs. So on this panel this afternoon, as you might have heard, we have recipients of organs, we have donors of organs, and we have persons that are awaiting organ donation. So with that being said, I'll just introduce our two moderators for this evening. And the first moderator I'd like to introduce is Dr. Velma Scantlebury, who is an author. She is the first Black female transplant surgeon in the US. And she has done quite a few transplants in her time. And we'll also introduce to you Miss Karen Cummins, who is a coordinator for the organ donation team, Live on New York. So at this point, I'd like to introduce Dr. Scantlebury, who has been our moderator, who you've been hearing of from all along. And Dr. Scantlebury will introduce to you as we go along those participants on the panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Trotman. I appreciate that. And Angela is chair of our educational committee. We'll hear from our recipients as well as donors and those awaiting transplantation. But before I begin to introduce the panel, I'm just going to talk a little bit about our general statistics. But first, before we get that, I'm going to go to a poll question first. Sorry about that. But we'll ask about organ donation. So can we have that poll question up, please? Okay, so we have 74%, are you an organ donor? Said no. 26% yes. So we're hoping that with this webinar tonight, that we can begin to bring to you some information about organ donation. And perhaps we can increase that number of those who are willing to be an organ donor, because we certainly need your help. We need your help in saving lives. We need your help in giving that gift to others who are in need. And, when we look at those who are waiting on the donor list in this country, there are over 107,000 people listed on our transplant list for an organ. Over 90,000 of those are awaiting kidneys, because kidneys become our most predominant organ in need, primarily because of the leading cause of diabetes, number one, and high blood pressure. And within the African-American community, high blood pressure is number one. And each and every one of us knows someone with high blood pressure, someone with diabetes, and not understanding that both of these can cause kidney disease and related to the leading causes of why we need more organs. Because when we walk into any dialysis unit, you will find that the majority of those on dialysis are people of color. And while 90% of US adults support organ donation, only about 60% actually sign up to be an organ donor. And we see from our own poll that we have less than 30% or 26% of people on here out of 32 people are actually willing to sign an organ donor, be an organ donor. And unfortunately, 17 people die every day waiting for an organ donor, when in actuality, so many people can be helped. The reality is that only 3 in 1,000 people will die in a manner that they can receive an organ, because you need to have at least, if you're resuscitated, you have to make it to the hospital. And then family has to agree to organ donation. And then you have to go through the process of being an organ donor. And so many things enter into that equation, where you have sustained viability of your other organs to be in order to donate organs. And so out of 107,000 patients awaiting transplantation, if we took the year of 2020, there were only 39,000 transplants being performed. So there's always going to be many who will wait years to receive an organ. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit more about why that need is. And for those of you here in New York, we're going to hear more from Ms. Karen Cummins from Live on New York, who's going to give us information about statistics about New York, the numbers waiting, and the actuality of those patients within New York State. So Ms. Karen Cummins. You're on mute. Okay, there you go.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Scantlebury. The statistics in New York are similar to what it is nationwide, as you discussed. We have over 8,600 people that are currently waiting in New York State for life-saving transplants. More than 60% of those waiting are people of color. As Dr. Scantlebury said, about 70% of those that are waiting for transplants are waiting for kidney transplants. And most people in New York State who are waiting a kidney transplant will wait a minimum of 5.5 to 7 years. Mainly because there is dialysis, but if you know anybody who's on dialysis, it is not a quality of life. And unfortunately, New York is at the bottom of the list. Out of the 50 states, New York is at the bottom. So that means that the people that are waiting in New York State will wait twice as long as every other state in the country. So the shortage is critical. And it's important that you get the right information so that you can make an informed decision. And that's really what we're trying to do tonight, is make you educated enough that when you're asked the question, or when you go to your local DMV, or you're approached about registering, that you have the knowledge to make the right decision. So for New York, it's critical, but it is, as Dr. Scantlebury says, across the country, really critical. So our goal is to try to not only educate, but also have you take action. New York only has about 42% of its residents who are registered to be organ donors. Most states have over 62%. So it's the reason why we in New York, especially at Live on New York, tries to encourage people to register as much as they possibly can, and then tell their family. We believe it's a gift you give your family, that they know what your wishes are, so that if they're ever approached in the hospital, they know exactly what you would have wanted. So Dr. Scantlebury, back to you.
So I'm sure, Ms. Cummins, that we saw a few of the myths and misperceptions in the short video that was highlighted up there. And one of the things that unfortunately we still run into, which is a lot of negativity about organ donation, signing your organ donor card. So can you tell us a little bit about the things you come across about why folks are reluctant to sign their organ donor card or be registered on the registry?
Yes. Well, there's a couple of things. I've been doing this for 16 years. So you hear a lot of things that make people apprehensive. You gave some data that says, you know, over 90% of the population says organ donation is a good thing. But when you approach them about actually taking that step to register, the numbers are drastically different. I think that the number one reason that people are apprehensive about registering to be an organ donor is they believe that if they're ever in an accident or an emergency situation, that if someone knows, either the EMT or the hospital workers know that they have registered to be an organ donor, that they will not try as hard to save their lives. I think that's the number one thing that I hear in all my outreach and talking to the public. I think that's the number one reason that people feel apprehensive. But I think they need to understand a little bit about the process. Live on New York is one of 57 what is called organ procurement organizations across the country. We are the largest in New York State. We cover everything from, say, Long Island to Poughkeepsie, so about 13 million people. And the process that we go through, which is, it affects every OPO across the country, is we're notified of every death that occurs in our area. So we get about 60,000 calls per year. And after we're notified of that, we have to then check and see if that individual is listed on the registry. In New York State, as I said, only about 42% of our residents are listed. If you are not listed on the registry, which is a confidential database maintained by the Department of Health, we don't even know who's listed. Then we have to approach your next of kin or your healthcare proxy to ask them for consent. And about half the people that we approach who are not registered say no to donation. And then we're not able to go forward. So we have to get that consent confirmed before we can even consider organ donation. And remember that if you're in an emergency situation, that the hospital workers, the EMT workers are going to do everything they can to save your life. Because as Dr. Scantlebury said, there's such a small portion of people that can be potential donors because you have to die specifically hooked up to a respirator. So if you died at the scene of the accident and there was no oxygen in those organs, you could not be a potential donor. So usually only between 1 and 1.5% of all deaths occur in the way that you can be a potential organ donor. And so it's critical that you are taken to the hospital. They're going to try everything they can. Their goal is not to help organ donation. Their goal is to save your life. So organ donation only comes into play after you've passed away. 2 doctors have to give you a series of tests to see if there's any brain activity, any brain stem activity. They're done hours apart. We're not notified of anybody in those circumstances unless you have progressed to brain death. So if you were unconscious, you were in a coma, we don't know anything about you until that death is determined. And then usually within an hour to 2 hours, we're notified. So organ donation is not even discussed or approached by our organization until that diagnosis of brain death has occurred. So I think people should really be comforted in the factor that we have to go through those series of steps. Even if you have registered to be an organ donor, and in New York State, we have a lot of ways you can do it. You can do it when you register to vote. You can do it at your local DMV. You can do it when you sign up for health insurance. Even if you've gone through all of those steps, when we determine that, we still have that conversation with your family before we even consider testing you to see which organs are viable. So we show them all the material that you completed. We have that discussion with them. So there's a lot of steps we have to go through before organ donation can even be a factor.
It's also important to understand that once, for most patients who become organ donors, it's because they have a brain injury. They had trauma to the brain, car accident, motor vehicle accident, gunshot wound to the head, massive stroke. And if you think about your skull, when your brain bleeds or there's injury to your brain, there's very little room for a space for that blood to go. And so there's so much pressure within your brain that sometimes some of these patients end up with no blood flow to the brain. And so they're then examined, as Karen said, by 2 physicians and being no longer survivable because there's no brain flow. But when family comes in and to see their loved one laying there connected to the machine and artificially being ventilated, the ventilators breathing for them and the heart still beating because of all the medications, it's hard to understand that they're beyond the point of recovery. And at that point, when they're approached for organ donation from the family, then the family can choose to either deny or accept the fact that this is something that can be done to save lives. But our goal as physicians is to try to save that patient, try to save the brain, try to save before we can go. And that's why it's so important that those potential donors we need to make sure that they're healthy, that they don't have any source of infections, they don't have any cancers or things that can be passed on to the person receiving those organs, so that in the face of an infection, say like a COVID infection, they may not be usable, because even though the organs are fine, that infection may still be passed on to the recipient. So those are things that we try to make sure that we're not passing on things that can potentially cause the death of the person receiving that organ. And it's very important that there's a lot of steps in the process to get there. And that's why we need organ donation. We need you to tell us, what are your reluctance? Why are you reluctant? What are your fears? Certainly, we get all these stories across the media about my uncle's granddaughter's cousin neighbor told them that they went to the hospital and something happened and they ended up being a donor, or they woke up in a hotel in a tub with ice with a note on the chest saying the organs were taken. So it's all these stories that are out there that are not correct to get passed on. That creates issues and distrust. But we know that in this country there is a reason for distrust, because we know that within the medical community we have a lot of examples that show us that even within healthcare there's distrust of physicians. But you can be assured that in the process of organ donation, every I is dotted and T is crossed in order to make sure. And this is a system that's regulated and vetted by the federal government, by the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, so that everything is done in a process with tremendous oversight and accountability. So thank you so much for explaining that process. And it's important for us to answer your questions. So those of you in the audience, please feel free to put your questions in the chat so that we can answer those questions and clear up any reservation that you may have. And so I would like to move to our 2 recipients, or those candidates who are waiting for an organ transplant. And so I'm going to spotlight Gail Gordon and Mickey West. So I would like you to unmute yourselves and tell us about your journey waiting for an organ transplant. And Gail, I'll let you go first.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Gail Gordon. I am a kidney transplant awaiting patient. I've been on dialysis for 6 years. This is my 6th year. Right side, I am almost there as in terms of getting an organ. I've been in communication with the hospital and they're saying anytime now. So it's a beautiful thing. I've done my tissue typing. I regularly get my blood screens at my dialysis center sent over to my hospital of choice. So fingers crossed. Yeah, my journey has been, I guess, kind of up and down, and you kind of go through a period of time when you're kind of in denial and you're like, no, 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 I can fix this. The GFR is not right. I can eat better. I can be healthier. But honestly, after you sit down and you have a talk with your nephrologist and they really explain that, the organ does not regenerate and you really have to make some big decisions in terms of getting on the transplant list and, making this list work for you and being compliant, then you kind of realize that, the time for imagining is over and now the time for the work starts. So
Absolutely. I just
right.
want to explain, you said about your GFR. GFR is a monitor of your kidney function. This is what we call glomerular filtration rate. And so once your kidney function is below 20%, and for some people below 15%, means that your kidneys are no longer able to filter and get rid of waste products that it would normally do on a regular basis. And so when it's working 15%, there need to be another option because 85% of your waste products are going to be accumulated in your body, which can affect your brain, affect your thinking, affect your heart. So at that point is either provided as a patient, you're provided with those options hopefully earlier on so that you can get on a transplant list at 20% of kidney function. Or if you don't have, if you can do it before, even when you don't need dialysis, but if your function gets to 20%, then you can be on the transplant list, even if you're doing well, because you will need to wait until your time on the list, being it near years, as we hear from Gail, she's been on it, 6 years?
Yes.
And at that point, you continue on dialysis until you either find a living donor or get called for a deceased organ donor. So for her, it's been a while. Have you had a call in the past? Have you getting previous calls about coming in for a transplant?
No. I literally was in denial up until like 2 years ago.
Okay.
And then, we did the work. I went in, I spoke with the consulting physician and the surgeon, and, we made some decisions and they thought I would be a great candidate. I'm young. I'm relatively healthy. I love when they say that. You're relatively very healthy. There's nothing
Awesome.
wrong except the whole kidney thing, right? So there's nothing wrong except the whole kidney thing. So I'm a very good candidate. And they really felt like it would be a good opportunity to get me a transplant. So
Yeah, and like Gail said, while the liver can regenerate, the kidney cannot regenerate. So once you are in chronic renal failure and you get below that 20%, that is what it is.
it.
You can sometimes fluctuate between 15 and 18, depending on what you eat or what you drink, but basically you're still less than 20% and you need an alternative method to filter your body. Otherwise, those waste products will play havoc on your system. And that's so very important to understand. So
Yes.
I appreciate what was your cause of your kidney disease, if you don't mind sharing?
So I got diagnosed with high blood pressure
Okay.
when I was about 28. And I got pregnant at 34 and I still had high blood pressure. And then I had superimposed preeclampsia, which is just really, really, really high blood pressure when you're pregnant. And it never went away.
Yeah.
It was
So
not gestational, it just stayed. And then I think like a year after I had my daughter was when I was almost toxic and I had to go to the hospital and they said, well, this is it, stage 5.
Yes.
So we have to put you on dialysis.
Absolutely. So high blood pressure becomes the #1 cause of kidney failure within the African American community. So if you certainly fall into that group of having high blood pressure, you want to make sure that you get your kidney function checked and that you stay on top of your kidney function so that you are aware of what's happening. So thank you so much. I'm going to go to Mickey West. Mickey, welcome to this session. And you are awaiting or being worked up for a liver transplant. Is that correct?
Yes, yes, I am.
Okay. So tell us about that journey, how you discovered that you have liver disease and where you are in your workup.
So I was born with hepatitis B, and with that, I was being monitored at Beth Israel by Dr. Aftal. And so lucky for me, I had been getting tests every year, getting my blood work, my AFP levels, the alpha beta proteins, and making sure that the enzymes are always in stasis or whatnot. In 2016, I believe, we found out after taking Variad, a medicine created for AIDS patients, it eradicated my hepatitis B. I no longer am a carrier and I don't have any enzymes. So in 2019, in September, they did the first surgery where my AFP levels were at 1800. And then from there, they took it out in section 5, 6, and along with that, they took the gallbladder. And then about a year later, it returned again in the same area. So they went in laparoscopically, and they took that out. That was in September of 2020. In December of 2020, they went in because it had come back. And then in January 7th, they checked my AFP levels and they were around 700. And 14 days later, they came back at around 2,800. And then in March, previous to my surgery, they did another surgery, and this time it went from lobe 1 and jumped all the way to lobe 2. So they were discussing doing the yttrium 90 or the Y90 procedure in December. And to which I said, no, I would rather just have it all taken out. And then if it comes back, then we can radiate it. And then so in March, after we found out, I went and had the yttrium 90 procedure, because at this point it completely jumped lobes to section 2-3. So regardless of whether if I had the yttrium 90 in December, it wouldn't have done anything because it would have come back in a different
Right.
lobe. And so
they
right
decided
now,
to put you on a list. You're now on the list.
not yet. I'm working on it. So far, the only thing that I have left now is my cardiac stress test, an allergy test, just a number of different tests for me to be able to get on. But I believe right now they were saying what number?
7.
Number 7 out of possible 35
On the rank out of
on
40.
on the ranking.
Okay.
The rankings.
All right.
Yeah.
And so other than my liver, it's typically if I go on a transplant list, people that need a new liver has a lot of cirrhosis.
Right.
My liver is perfectly healthy. It's like one of the healthiest livers that my doctor actually said, but it doesn't do me any good until I get a new one.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you are on your journey to have your liver replaced, which
Right.
is important. And for livers, that's kidneys, you can have living donation, and for liver, you can also have someone donate a portion of
Right.
their liver. And as Mickey was saying, that there are sections of your liver. We usually divide it in various sections, And
Right.
so oftentimes you try to remove those areas that is diseased to allow for control of the issue, but oftentimes it can travel from in many different locations within the liver
Yeah.
itself, which then leads to say there's no point in removing so many piecemeal. Eventually it's going to come back. And so that
Yes.
unfortunately place her in a position where she will need to have her liver replaced through liver transplantation, even though she is cured of hepatitis B by treatment. So thank you so much for your story. I hope
welcome.
that you're able to
Having me.
continue your workup and be successful in getting listed, as you otherwise don't have. And one of the advantages of even though you need a liver is that for most patients who just have liver disease, there's not a whole lot of other comorbidities to deal with in terms of heart disease. You're young, you're healthy, you're not diabetic, you don't have high blood pressure, all those things which can make your course after transplant difficult. You would be in a better shape to recover and to continue to do well. So thank you so much. And we know the quest for
Thank you.
organ donation is important. We know that we want those who are willing to do so to be able to become an organ donor or donate a loved one's organs. So I'm going to bring to the stage Ms. Carmen Blanchard, who is a deceased donor mom. And I hope she's able to get on and be able to show herself. So I want to introduce Carmen and have her tell us what made her, how did she arrive at the decision to donate her loved one's organ?
Yes. So for me, it was not an easy decision because although for over 20 years, 30 years, I've worked at a major hospital, when it came to my son, who had a brain aneurysm, and after having his coiling, he went into cardiac arrest. So in as much as I am familiar with the healthcare, organ donation was never on my list. As a West Indian mom, we were always told whatever you came with, you went back with it. So we never considered that. But I remember when he was pronounced brain dead and we were approached, I was so angry because I was hoping that somebody would say there was a chance for him. And he has two daughters. One was in Miami at the time, and the other one was in Charleston. She was just 18-year-old. And when we were approached, she said to me, "Grandma, I signed my card. I am an organ donor." And I was like, "Are you crazy?" And then my youngest son said to me, "But Mom, you know that Lukey is the type of person, he would give his shirt if someone needed it." So with that, I was convinced.
Yeah.
And I must emphasize that, like Karen said, it has to be where two doctors pronounced him to say that he was brain dead. Coincidentally, when they started the clock, one of the doctors was not a resident. So they had to start over. And by the time they get around to declaring him brain dead, he was pronounced brain dead on my 62nd birthday, which for me was like, how could you, But we made that decision, and the support from Live On New York has, even to explain to us what our options were in terms of donating. I was still skeptical. What I know today is so much different from what I knew 12 years ago, because at that time I was still struggling as to what should I donate for him. And we eventually decided to donate his kidneys because I was still like not fully convinced that that was the right thing to do. But eventually working with Live On New York as a volunteer and being exposed to some of the things that an organ donor can donate, and being aware of some of the close friends that I've now acquired who have had transplant themselves and see what has happened, and the fact that how lovely it has been to save somebody's life. So and tragically, my 18-year-old granddaughter died on the 19th. And I have a niece that's waiting for a kidney. And so we decided to donate Camille's kidney. And she got to the hospital and was getting ready to get this transplant. And we were praying that it would work. Unfortunately, they weren't compatible. So in the midst of hoping that Camille would be able to save Corinne's life off dialysis, someone else had gotten it. And with that, still and all, you give thanks, because we are more aware as a family of how much it can help someone. So although I still struggle, I volunteer, and I'm happy, so happy to see the lives of how organ donation has helped so many people. So with that, I am forever grateful for the family I have acquired with Live On New York. In the 12 years, they have never left my side. They have continuously called to see how I'm doing. And Karen, I have to thank you for being there, because it's been a blessing, because the road of losing your firstborn is not an easy road to travel as a mom, because you have plans for your kids, because he was the one that was going to take care of me when I got old. Unfortunately, it didn't work my way, but still I'm happy that he was able to save someone else's life. And, knowing what I know now, there is so much that can be done with organ donation, so many lives that can be helped. I have met so many people with cornea transplant, kidney, and the list goes on. So it is a beautiful thing. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, for your story. And I appreciate your honesty, and I appreciate your saying that it was difficult, because
Yeah.
in that time that you're facing the death of your loved one, it's a tough decision. You're not really thinking about other people's lives being saved. It really needs to be driven home. And so you're looking at, why isn't my loved one living and dying? Why are they dying? And so I appreciate your willingness to be an organ donor and to be able to share your story so that others understand the process. The process
And
is about,
I think one of the important thing is education, because if you don't know how good it can work for someone who is desperately in need, with you giving out this information, someone may just change their mind about not being a donor. And you never know where the loved one is that's waiting, that you can save that life. So I thank you so much.
Thank you, Carmen. Dr. Stansselberry, just to say something, I'm sure that you were also going to reiterate, is the process. We understand how difficult it is. It is the worst time to have that discussion with a family when you've discovered that your loved one has passed away. And that's why we're always hoping that the education about organ donation happens over the dinner table way before you're ever in the hospital in need and having to have that discussion. It is something that is a priority for us, not only for the life-saving transplants of the thousands of people who are waiting, but also the families, just like Carmen. Carmen is my family. I say I've adopted her and she's adopted me, whether she wants me or not. And for us, it's also supporting those donor families. We have a donor family services department that supports our donor families for at least 5 years after the donation occurs. That is a critical and important part of it. And, you know, it's the reason why we want every family to have the confidence that everything was done to save your loved one. That's why we don't want the doctors to ever have to have that discussion with the family. We want to come in and do that, so that if there was ever a question, right, you know that the doctors did everything they could. And only when there was nothing else that could be done, organ donation was even an option. And what we ask every recipient, and I'm sure Roxanne will talk about this, and whoever else is the recipients here, is to send a letter of thanks to their donor family after the donation occurs. We know it's difficult to do. A lot of people say, how do we formulate it to say thank you for my life? But we always ask them to do it, because for our donor families, that's the one thing that they want. They want to know that that gift of life has not only been taken care of, but appreciated. So Carmen, thank you so much for telling your story. You know, I appreciate you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, so much. I had one of my liver transplant recipients from many years ago. He actually designed a card set of cards that were pre-made with all different types of information in them, and so that you can send to your donor family, because many people don't know how to make that first step. And I also heard a story of this young man who received, he was a pastor and he received his heart, and he wrote to his family, donor family, every single year, anniversary and birthday and Christmas. Got no response, but he was persistent. And he continued writing for 10 years. And at the 10-year anniversary, he heard back from his donor family. And they were very much pleased with receiving those letters. They just couldn't begin to respond, but they kept every single one. And they were so grateful for that correspondence until they finally met. And what an incredible story. And for me, as a transplant surgeon, I remember the very first time that I watched a transplant cardiac surgeon take out the heart and put it on ice and transport that heart and connect that heart and warm that heart up and shocked it, and then to see it continue to beat. An incredible, incredible undertaking that's beyond our comprehension, our ability to know that there's no nerves that's connected, it's just blood vessels, and the autonomy of that heart to be able to do that. So this gift of organ donation is a tremendous one. It really can save so many lives. And with that, I'm going to let Karen introduce our next recipient, Roxanne, to tell us about her journey with Roxanne, who also received, who was fortunate enough to receive a heart many years ago. There you go.
I say exactly what Carmen said earlier. We have created our own little family of recipients and donor families. I'm sure Dr. Scantlebury is the same. You get to meet people, right? And they touch you because they have these amazing stories. And Roxanne is one of them. I always say she's a superwoman. I have to always tell her to like go sit down somewhere because she's always doing something. And she has more energy than I do, 100%. But I actually heard Roxanne's story during one of our staff meetings when she was waiting for her transplant. Just where she's come from, and I have been with her to meet her donor family, and we have done so many things together. And Roxanne will go out and talk to people at her local deli. She goes to the mall. She signs people up. So she is amazing, and she's been all over the place. But so I just want to introduce Roxanne Watson. She is a heart recipient, and she's going to talk about her journey to transplantation.
Thank you. Thank you. There's so many things I want to jump on. Mickey and Gail, and God bless Carmen. I mean, just amazing stories. We were actually in the mall last weekend. We signed up 25 people in 24 hours. So we never give up. We just don't give up. In 2006, I suffered a silent heart attack. I had a heart attack in May. I did not know about it until June when I went to the hospital 6 weeks later. And by then I had damaged my heart, obviously, and went into cardiac care at my local hospital here in, I live in Rockland County, so at Nyack Hospital, I went there. And I was in cardiac care here in the county for about 2 years, from 2006 to 2008. In 2008, I was told there was nothing else they could do for me on this local level. And they sent me to Montefiore in the Bronx, to the cardiac care center to Dr. Julian Shin. And Dr. Shin did 9 days of evaluation. At the end of the 9 days, she says, we have good news and we have bad news. I said, I'll take the bad news first. She said, the bad news is your heart is failing, but the good news is we're going to put you on the transplant list, which I didn't think was good news, but you know, it was what it was. They put me on the transplant list in June of 2008. And I was bad, but I got really started deteriorating around December of 2009. And in April of 2010, when I went for my regular cardiac evaluation, she said, Dr. Shin said, you're gonna have to stay in hospital because you won't, if you go home, you're not gonna live, basically is what she told me. I was 95 pounds at that point. I couldn't walk. I could barely eat. Everything I ate came right back up. It was a bad scene. So they put me in the hospital and they said, okay, you got B positive blood. It shouldn't be too bad. It shouldn't be too long of a wait. And I say famous last words at that point. 3 weeks after I was in the hospital, they came to me and they said, we have a possible match. And we're going to go ahead and do the evaluation on the donor end. And as they did the evaluation, the team decided the heart wasn't, what they wanted for me. Because like Mickey and a couple of people said that, I was healthy other than a bad heart, basically what it came down to. I didn't have high blood pressure, anything like that. It's just my muscle of my heart was failing. About 3 more weeks later, I got another call. Now I'm still in the hospital all of this time. And I was told that they had another heart. And again, the team turned it down and another person got that particular heart. 3 or 4 more weeks come, and then there's the third heart now. The gentleman was a prisoner and he had HIV. So I was notified that it was a high-risk heart, possibly HIV. So the team turned it down. So now I'm like over 60 something days in the hospital. And that's when I really started educating myself, because I was like, there's a reason why I'm still waiting. And then that's when I found out the horrible numbers in New York about how we needed to start signing some more people up. So I had what I call my Oprah moment, my aha moment. And I told God, source, whatever he is, she is, I said, if I live, when I get out of here, I'm going to share this story. I'm going to make sure I sign up people everywhere I go, because that's what it's going to take. You can talk all of this other stuff, but if people are not signed up and people are not registered or amenable to registering, it's useless. So I said, that's going to be my mission. So 78 days later, after being in the hospital, I did receive the final phone call, which I didn't even believe was going to happen at that point. And they came to me and they said, we have a heart for you. And I got the heart of Michael Bovril, which I carry and take every place with me. That's Michael right there. I have his heart. He saved 5 of us. He saved me with his beautiful heart. A little girl, a little Hispanic girl in Staten Island, got one of his kidneys. An African-American boy in the Bronx who actually was in the same hospital as me, got his other kidney. A 42-year-old Jewish man in Manhattan got double lungs from him. And a 62-year-old Chinese man in Chinatown got his liver. So not only did he save me, every single one of us was different. We were Black, we were Spanish, we were Asian, we were Jewish. We were everything. We were all different religions. Every single one of us was a different person. So we love to tell Michael's story only to show people that age, color, race doesn't matter. We started at 5 years old and we ended at 62 years old. And those are the amazing things that Michael did. About 11, actually about 6 months. Let me go back a little bit. 9 days after I got out of that hospital, I was back at that hospital doing Minority Organ Donor Week. That was the first event that I did. I told my story and I signed up 20 people that day. And I said, this is pretty cool. I can do this. This looks like fun. So,
Awesome.
so
Awesome.
I just started doing events. I guess it came to the attention of Oprah's people. And in January of 2011, I was called by one of her producers who told me that they wanted me to come on her show and talk about my experience as an African-American woman with organ donation. So it was focused on minority organ donors. We need more. And that's basically what my story was. That was in January. So in June of that year, we went to a taping in New York City, in New York City studio. And Karen can attest to this, that they surprised me, because that's what Oprah does.
Awesome. What an incredible story. Absolutely. I
That's
mean,
what she does. And they
yep.
surprised me. And I was on the show and I was telling my story thinking, oh, I'm so cute. I'm on Oprah, and, you know, and telling my story. And then Dr. Oz was there. Dr. Phil was there. Susie Ormond, all of them were there. Gail King. And Dr. Oz said, we have a surprise for you. And I said, okay. But remember, I'm a heart patient. And the door opened and in walked his entire family. His mom, his dad, his grandmother, his aunt, his sisters. He was the only boy, he was the oldest, and he had 3 sisters. His sisters were there. And that's when I met them. And as I met them that day, I pledged again to them personally that I would spend the rest of my life, if it was 5 minutes or 10 years, that I would spend the rest of my life sharing his story as a legacy to him and signing people up to be organ donors. And that's how I started signing people up. And I've been signing people up ever since, from that day at Minority Day to this weekend in the mall. And
Awesome story. Thank you so much. I mean, I think it's important for everyone to hear that story and be touched by it, because it's so very important. Just imagine that family just meeting someone, listening to their loved one's heart is in your chest. This is their son's organ that's keeping another person alive. What a blessed opportunity that is, to be able to hug that family and for them to hug you and to know that this all these lives have been saved through organ donation. I don't know if that, I hope that just your story alone can convince some of our audience members to even begin to consider organ donation, because it's an incredible gift, a gift of life, and God had other plans for you.
Yeah.
You
Absolutely.
definitely, he had other
Absolutely.
plans for you.
And I know what they are. I
Yes,
know what they
yes.
are, and that made it easy. I just have to say one more thing. I'm very proud to say we are 88 people away from 12,000 people signed up.
Awesome, awesome. And hopefully we can get some more tonight. So thank you so much for that story.
You're welcome. Thank you for having
absolutely
me.
phenomenal. And we know that it's so very important to spread the word, to be an advocate for such a great cause. Organ donation, kidney disease, organ disease is not on the radar of people that we know, because once we don't want to talk about dying. We don't want to talk about the fact that we will someday leave this earth. And what better way to do that by passing on a legacy, leaving behind an opportunity for others to have a new leash on life by using something that we no longer need. We can't, once we are brain dead, if we have that opportunity, what better way to pass on, recycle ourselves through giving that gift to someone else. So I really appreciate your story.
You're welcome.
Not everyone is fortunate enough to be like you and others, but others also have an opportunity. There are other ways to find an organ donor. And some of those are through living donation. We know that there's an opportunity to have a living donor through a liver, a living donor through even a lung transplant, and most of all, a kidney transplant. So we're going to transition over to living donation. We know that there are living donors and what we call altruistic donors, those who are just out of the kindness of their own heart, want to be able to give to others because they want to help someone else. So we're going to turn to our two living donor peer, and who the mother and daughter, Gail and Ashley, Adams, who can tell us about the story. What made you decide to donate? How was the process? And how do you feel now that you're able to for Ashley? Now, how do you feel now that you're to normal?
So I'm Ashley. Hello. And this is my mom, Gail. I was diagnosed with diabetes when I was 12. And so that was eventually the cause of my kidney failure. I didn't take care of myself for a very long time. And so when I finally got myself together, during my doctor's visits, my creatinine level was pretty high. And so when he realized that my kidney was, I guess starting to fail, I was around stage 3, and I took like matters into my own hands, basically just trying to take care of myself better and, changing my diet and making sure that I'm like controlling my sugars. And so my A1C came down, my health was better, but my kidneys were not. So every time I went to the doctor, the creatinine just kept getting higher and higher. And so I think around, I want to say, what year was this? This was 2017. So I want to say like November 2017, I started looking into organ, like getting a transplant. And my cousin is actually a social worker and she works at Kingsbrook. And so I spoke to her because she has a lot of patients who were either on dialysis or also on transplant lists. So she gave me a list of hospitals to check out, and I decided to go with Columbia. And you have to go on. I filled out the survey, and almost immediately they called me back to start my process as far as like coming in to get tested and stuff. And at first I went with my sister. After I had the meeting with all of the social workers and the doctors, they said, well, you have to ask someone to, give you a kidney. I said, well, how do you ask somebody for an organ? Like, I don't really know how to do that. So the first person I thought, I was like, I'll go with my sister because that felt safe. And so I asked her, and at the time she was around 19. And she said, okay. And so we decided to start her testing process, and she was a match. But by the time, she was a match. And then I ended up in the hospital, I want to say January.
My birthday, January.
Yeah. So my mom's birthday, I was actually in the hospital. So like 2 days before her birthday, which is probably like the 14th, I ended up in the hospital, and my kidney was done, done for it. I was absolutely like in kidney failure. And but I was already on the list and starting my process. So I didn't end up getting a fistula. What they did is they gave me a catheter like here in my neck, so that I could start emergency dialysis that day. Right. And so I started dialysis January 18th of 2018. And I was on dialysis until July 11th when I got my kidney transplant. Dialysis, like, as you all know, if you're a doctor or if you are on dialysis, like the doctor said, there is no real quality of life with dialysis. And so I was always tired. I lost a lot of weight. I stopped working. I couldn't really work. And so it was just, I was suffering from depression. It was a lot happening because dialysis is just, it's not fun. I was actually one of the youngest people in my center. A lot of people at my dialysis center were older than me. And I kind of noticed that a lot of people didn't really have much hope or want to try to get a kidney. And so everyone kind of just gave up. And for me, because I was so young at the time, I still have a lot of things that I want to do. I still would like to have a family. I have a career that I'm still developing. And so I knew that that wasn't my, I guess, view on, like being on dialysis and getting a transplant. Mm-hmm. And so luckily for me, honestly, my process was very easy just because when I did go in to meet with the surgeon, he decided he wanted to test my mom. And so he said, because my mother has been alive longer, she has a history, like a health history that's pretty good. She doesn't have any pre-existing.
It's excellent.
She has an excellent. Mom is
correct. She doesn't have any issues.
Excellent health. Let's get them right now.
Right. So her excellent health history. Also the fact that because I have diabetes, my brother was also diagnosed at around the same time. It's a possibility that my sister could also end up getting diagnosed. And so she would obviously need her organs. And so he decided to, like I said, we tested my mom. My mom was also a perfect match. And so we ended up going with my mother. and everything just worked out the way it was supposed to work out. I'm very blessed and very fortunate because I know a lot of people are on this list for years. I know some people don't even get to get their transplant, but for me, like I said, it worked out pretty well, and I'm very thankful that it was actually my mom, because, you know, I always say to people, like, she gave me life twice, which is very true. And
Absolutely.
so yeah, that's my story. Right now, I'm happy, I'm healthy. I'm dealing with some side effects from the medication, but it's really more so just like cosmetic things like weight gain and stuff like that from the steroids. But other than that, I'm fine. I'm fine.
You know,
and
I
I'm
keep
good.
I keep telling my patients who say they're gaining weight from the steroids, and then there's those who are not on steroids and continue to gain weight, and then there are those of us who are not even on transplant medication and continue to gain weight. So
Right.
you can blame the steroids. The rest of us don't have any reason. Can't blame the steroids. It's something else. So you can pretend it's the steroids. I will say that for Mom, I'm sure you didn't think twice about giving your daughter an organ, correct?
No, it was just relatively quick. The doctor, he said, would you be willing to? I was like, okay, let's go. He's like, okay, now we got to do some stuff first, And I did a whole lot of workup. They tested me for everything under the sun. I had to do stress tests, PET scans, CT scans. I did a lot of blood work. I actually counted the amount of tubes. Yes, and
Yes, don't tell us. You might scare
Don't tell
someone.
you.
Don't tell us those twos. And it's a lot of blood. You want to make sure you're healthy. You want to make
Yes.
sure that we get you off the table. You have
Yes.
to understand that as a living donor going under surgery, you are the healthiest person in that hospital. You have no reason to undergo anesthesia. We're not there to fix you or to
Right.
correct any abnormality. You're there to save someone else. And so part of your workup is making sure your heart's good, making sure that no bad things can happen to you,
Right.
to protect you from, you will not get a more thorough workup
I
in your
agree.
whole life
That's true.
than you would as a living donor. And for the nephrologists, they're there to possibly rule you out. They're looking at every single thing to say,
Yes.
how can we nix you? We're not
Yes.
there to make sure. So our goal is to make sure that beyond the shadow of a doubt, that when you donate a kidney, that what's left behind is it going to be able to sustain you for the rest of your life. We don't want to hear that in 10 years you need the kidney. And so the goal from this is to work you up as a living donor and to make sure that you are going to be well, to continue to be monitored, and to continue to do well. And
Yes.
so we're running short on time, so I'm going to come back to each and every one of you, but I want to have our technical support to, now that we've heard all this wonderful information about organ donation, why we need to have more people sign on. We hopefully, through some of our efforts, we can move this needle from 40-something% in New York State to 50%, whatever it may be, but we need your help to be able to do that. So I'm going to have them poll the audience again about the willingness to sign up to be an organ donor and to see whether anything that we've said today made a difference for those who are willing to be an organ donor. We're not asking you if you're willing to, if you're going to sign it. We're asking, are you willing to be an organ donor based on the information that you're seeing here today? So please go ahead and answer the question, and let us know what your thoughts are, because we've got to change some minds. And this is Organ Donor Month, and so August is Minority Organ Donor Awareness Month, and we'll do this again. We'll continue to use people like Roxanne to constantly be able to put this information out there and to plug this information out there, because we have many people of color who are now rising on the organ donor waiting list more than when we look at minorities of color across the board. We're edging past, we're over 50% between Hispanic, Latinos. And so people of color are increasingly making up those in need of organs. So I thank you for your willingness to be here and to talk. And so we're going to, I think there was a question from the panelists, from one of the audience who said, would someone be eligible from a kidney transplant if they had one fully functioning kidney? Or would they need both to be between 15 and 20% to be eligible? If you have, many people are born, not a whole lot, but many people are born with one kidney and can survive with one functioning kidney. You think of the thousands of people who received an organ transplant and only have one kidney that is functioning correct. Their old kidneys may still be in place, but they're no longer functioning. And so you can function with one kidney as long as it's as appropriate to filter your body. You don't really need two. I think God gave us two so that we can be generous and be able to give to someone else. It's like us having a spare. So it's about generosity. So we have two kidneys, but we only need one to survive. And thank you so much. Are you willing to be an organ donor? We have now pushed that up to 80%. So that is phenomenal. And so I just hope that even though you said you're willing to be organ donor, that you take the next step and register to be an organ donor. Go to register me or organdonor.com. And so, yes, some people are born with a horseshoe kidney and some people are born with one kidney and one may not be functioning well. But as long as you have good kidney function, we're able to continue to, you can do well with one kidney. So thank you so much for the audience who are awesome to be able to do that. So I'm going to take some other questions from the audience. If there are no other questions, I'm just going to go around and ask the panelists to give their final words. Let's see, any other questions? Let's see. I don't. I was signing up to be an organ donor, but I am a 3 times cancer survivor. So the thing about cancer is you want to make sure that you are cancer free. And so part of the issue is that continue to sign your donor card, because you will get tested at the time that you become an organ donor. And so the goal is to make sure that there's no cancer in your body, depending on the type of the cancer that you have. And so for some people, they are cancer free. If they're 20 years out from a type of cancer, they can still be an organ donor. So there's a lot of things that go into that. So don't rule yourself out, but allow your organs to be considered at that time. So very, very good question. How do you alleviate the fears that are out there? Education. The more we talk about this, the more you discuss this with the people who are experts, those who are knowledgeable, try to alleviate your fears. You talk to the fear of being an organ donor. That's why we have others on here, Ms. Carmen, who can tell us about what, when it comes down to signing that organ donor card, when it comes down to agreeing to organ donation for your loved one. She's been there. And that's why our OPOs, or organ procurement, use previous donor families to advocate and to continue to tell their stories. And though not necessarily from the professionals, you don't want to hear from me because I benefit from this, but you want to hear from those who are in the trenches, who've done this, who knows what it is to be on the other side of the fence. So when you talk about your fears and discuss your fears with those who are knowledgeable, we can begin to get you on the path to being able to be willing to be an organ donor. So thank you so much. I think I got all the questions that were out there. So I'm going to start back from the beginning and have Gail and say in a minute, what would you say to your audience as we close out this session?
I guess I would say if you are considering organ donation, thank you for the consideration. I know that it's not like borrowing a cup of sugar. That's what I always say. You don't, it's a very hard thing to ask someone to donate for you. So if you do have people that are altruistic and are able to do that out of the kindness of their heart, it is very appreciated because it's a hard thing to do. So it's above and beyond what we expect. So I would just say thank you.
Thank you. And I want you to know that many transplant programs now have donor advocacy sessions where they can teach you or talk to your family about how to advocate, how to seek out living donation. And actually I have a session on Wednesday on decreasing the list by pursuing living donation by talking to the experts. So I'll put that link on the CAMSA site for anyone who wants to tune in on Wednesday, the 28th, with Kirdiets on finding a living donor.
Thank you.
So Mickey, I know you're waiting. What would you like to say to our audience?
That, I don't know, I think anyone that chooses to become an organ donor and or give part of their body to someone else so that they can live longer and have that quality of life that everyone is entitled to, it's very honorable. And so as a future recipient, I'm very thankful.
Thank you so much. And Roxanne, I know that you will continue advocating for others. That's your mission. Now that you have a new heart, a new lease on life. Final words?
I would just want to reiterate what my transplant surgeon told me. He said, I can do transplants all day, maybe 4 or 5, save 4 or 5 lives within 24 or 48 hours. He said, the things that you do will save thousands of lives. So keep on doing it. And that's it.
Absolutely. We need people like you and more people like you advocating. And that's why I use my patients who receive organs, because they are the best spokespersons about the benefits of transplantation. And to our living donor peer, Gail and Ashley, what would you like to tell our audience?
I think for me, it was quite amazing, and it still is amazing as I look at my daughter every day and see the difference that my kidney has made in her. I mean, you're giving someone else life, you're giving someone else hope, and I think anybody who is considering being an organ donor to just do it, just go ahead and do it. There's a lot of workup and stuff, but that really is nothing compared to the joy of seeing somebody bloom and blossom from your gift.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said, there's a lot of things that I wouldn't be able to do right now, and I've just been just able to live my life the way I would like to and fully. Before I was struggling, I couldn't do much, but now I'm working full time. I'm starting my own business. I'm doing a lot, and so I wouldn't be able to do it without my mother and my kidney. And I'm just very thankful and grateful, honestly. So.
Thank you so much. And Karen, I thank you for being with us here this afternoon. Any final words you would like to tell our audience? And I appreciate you moderating this session with me.
No, it was so wonderful, Dr. Scantlebury. I think, as much as I've seen the amazing miracles of organ donation in the 16 years that I've worked here, I really believe that signing up to be an organ donor is a personal decision. When I started, I wasn't a registered donor, but hearing these stories, all I could think of is a situation like the Adams, where I have a young daughter, and if she was ever in need and nobody was willing to donate to her, or we weren't a match, that she potentially could die waiting for a transplant that she didn't receive. So I registered really selfishly, because how could I ask someone to do something I wasn't willing to do myself? And I talk to people all the time, especially people of color. If you see a dialysis clinic in a lot of the areas in which we live, that means a lot of us are suffering from end-stage renal failure and kidney disease. And I think we just need to consider organ donation when we no longer need it, right? I believe it's my soul that goes on. My body has no worth. It will turn to dust. So if it can help someone, for me, I think it's key and important. And it's just something that I think we all should consider.
Absolutely. I constantly say, from dust we came and to dust we will return. And it's not this physical body that the Lord wants. So I thank you so much. I'm going to turn it over to Angela Trotman, chairperson of our educational committee. Angela.
Thank you, Dr. Scantlebury. Let me also speak to all the participants in this session. I, for one, even though I am a registered organ donor, I have worked in the situations where I have maintained patients for organ to where they can procure the organs. I know the situation. I know it's very difficult for families. And I can tell you, it was difficult on the staff doing it sometimes because the relatives would be asking you questions that you could not answer. And when I was in the field, when I was in the ICU, there had to be 3 neurosurgeons who did the 3 neurologists who did the testing. Now I gather it's only 2. So I think things are looking up. And to be honest with you, it was not easy maintaining those patients healthy because you have to maintain their heart, you have to
Yes.
maintain their lungs, you have to maintain everything. And it is not as simple as people might think, oh, if something happened, take my organs. It takes a lot of work up like you've heard.
Yep.
Thank you to all the participants. Thank you to the moderators. And I think we need to do this again because I think there's still a lot more information which we can pass on about organ donation and the recipients. So at this time, thank you, Miss Nikki West, because
We have to allow Dr. O'Neill to give his
Yeah.
final remarks.
I'm getting there. Thank
Okay.
you Nikki, for all your help. And at this time, I'll turn over the platform to Dr. O'Neill Paris, who will give the vote of thanks.
Angela, I thought that you were actually halfway there with your
Oh,
comments.
no.
But this has been a phenomenal program. It's been exceptional in my view. The testimonials were phenomenal. They were heart-rending. They were touching. And I can imagine that the audience wasn't touched by what they heard. And we saw that the movement in the needle in terms of those who are willing to consider organ donation went in the right direction. I want to thank actually the audience particularly for coming, and I hope that you'll continue to frequent or ongoing activities for the year. You'll see them posted on our website and in our email missives to you. Dr. Scantlebury, of course, is a member of our board, of CAMSA's board, and a member of our education committee. And I want to thank you for sharing with us your experience and knowledge of over 30 years as a transplant surgeon and bring perspective to what for many is a difficult subject. Things like mortality, and it makes us think about mortality when we talk about transplantation, obviously. And to Karen Cummins of Live on New York for explaining so ably the process of donation and dispelling some of the myths surrounding organ donation and updating us about the dire situation in New York State. And I think that we need to get out there and try to up the numbers as best we can. And I won't go over again the names of the donors and recipients that were mentioned and the mother of a deceased donor. You've seen them, you've heard them, and we want to thank them all for for coming. And those who are pending donations, we wish you great success and not too long a wait for the future. I want to thank the UBA, United Barbadian Associations, for the behind the work collaboration with us in this effort, and particularly its interim president, Ian Watson. And I want to thank also the great technology team of CAMSA, the PR team of Janelle Taylor and Sonia Clark for their work behind the scenes in making this program such a success. The program will be available on
Danielle Rouse.
Danielle, of course. Sorry, Danielle. The program will be available on the CAMSA Facebook page in a few days at facebook.com/camsa.org. So feel free to point your family and interested friends in that direction so they can learn about organ donation. Again, a great program. Everybody did a great job. I'm really thrilled that this came off so well. And I want to wish you all a good evening as you continue now to the next event, maybe dinner or whatever you normally do on Sunday evenings. But thanks again. Really appreciate it. Good night.